The Jehovah's Witnesses just released a new Watchtower, and it's a real banger because it has everything you could ever hope for. Telling children to get baptized, telling people to trust in the governing body even if it doesn't make sense or if they make mistakes, trying to fearmonger people into serving your organization by correlating some ancient prophecy of a statue with America and Russia, and just making claims that make absolutely no sense. So you know what? I thought we'd talk about it. Now, I've learned my lessons from the past, and I'm not going to be spending an exorbitant amount of time breaking down every single little detail in here, but just hitting some of the high points. So let's jump right into it. So the very first article in this is Get Baptized Without Delay. Now, of course, this is very important because once someone has a functioning frontal lobe and can think and use objective reasoning for themselves, it's very unlikely that they're going to become a Jehovah's Witness. And so they really need to capitalize on the emotional response that people will feel as they become integrated into the Jehovah's Witness culture. And that's kind of what they highlight in this article when talking about the reasons that people should be getting baptized. Here in paragraph 5, it says, "Are you convinced that God's word is the truth and that Jehovah's Witnesses overcome prejudice and endeavor to show one another genuine love, the identifying mark of true Christians? Then take decisive action, confident that Jehovah will bless you." So this is something that is really one of the only things, at least in my experience, that makes you think that the Jehovah's Witnesses are special. You have this concept that this organization is somehow unique and special because of the camaraderie and the cooperation with all of the Jehovah's Witnesses around the world. The worldwide brotherhood. That concept and idea that you could go to a foreign country where you don't even speak the same language, go to a kingdom hall, and hey, boy howdy hey, someone will invite you over for dinner and give you a place to sleep because you'll have that common bond of being a Jehovah's Witness. Now, the situation is a little bit more complicated than that once you remove yourself and from the actual world of Jehovah's Witnesses and living it day by day, and you realize that something slightly more nefarious is taking place, something that ultimately caused me to wake up. Because when you look at a group of Jehovah's Witnesses, they're all saying, "Listen, obey, and be blessed when you hear God's will expressed." So as everyone's yapping along to listen, obey, and be blessed, they're also rejecting any negative information. They're viewing as apostates anyone that says anything against the organization as an automatically coming from Satan, and they don't really have any close connections or friendships with people outside of the organization. Well, if you have this insulated world where everything on the outside is automatically bad and everything on the inside is automatically good, then of course your perception of the culture is going to be that it's wonderful. It's only when you step outside of that that you realize that this is a group pretty much like other groups, where you have people you get along with, people you don't, people you agree with, people you don't. But for the most part, because you kind of sort of are operating in the same sphere, you tolerate one another. That's how the world works. And it's so crazy that they take this and go so far with it as to think that this is the biggest evidence for someone to get baptized. And for me, that is something I would point to if someone challenged me and said, "Hey, well, why are you a Jehovah's Witness? What really makes Jehovah's Witnesses different?" Well, let me tell you right about John 13:35, because Jesus said, "You will know they are my disciples if they have love among themselves." But every single Christian congregation in the world probably reads that same scripture and they, okay, now we're going to take an intermission and everyone's going to turn around and talk to someone and give them a hug and ask them how their day was. And they feel like they have love amongst themselves too. Now, they give a funny example of someone from Germany, supposedly named Reuben, who had doubts whether or not God even existed. And he was able to read a Jehovah's Witness book and came to the conclusion that, you know what? I guess God does exist. And then he says here that publication had a tremendous effect on Reuben. He thought to himself, wow, Jehovah is real. And during a visit to world headquarters, Reuben deepened his appreciation for the miracle of our united international brotherhood. If you have doubts about what you have learned, face them by doing research in our publications. Doubts can be overcome with accurate knowledge. And as you hear reports about the love and unity among Jehovah's people in other parts of the world and see evidence of it in your own congregation, your appreciation for our worldwide brotherhood will grow. Do research in our publications. How bizarre does that sound? Gone are the days where they say, okay, and make sure you do research, really fortify your faith. Now they have to specify because everyone's walking around Googling everything as it's coming at them 24/7 because why not? How many Google searches do you make during a day? I probably make like at minimum 50. Just like any little random thing pops in my head. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I can learn about that. And I suspect that other Jehovah's Witnesses are doing a very similar thing. Maybe they're slightly less curious, but to some extent. Anyway, the point is exactly what I've said. Even when they are telling people that they need to get baptized, it doesn't really matter about this accurate truth. It all really boils down to, don't you feel loved? And that feeling is the thing that's going to propel people into getting baptized. Now, this story I did find interesting about Anna. Anna grew up in a Kurdish family in Eastern Europe. After her mother got baptized, Anna began to study the Bible at age 9 with her father's approval. However, this caused problems with her extended family, who all lived together with Anna's family. The relatives viewed it as a disgrace for someone to leave the religion of their forefathers. Well, how terrible of them. How sad and pathetic Anna's family was for thinking that they couldn't let someone leave their own religion. Oh wait, my mistake. That's exactly what Jehovah's Witnesses do. If you are a young child as a Jehovah's Witness and you're like, you know what, this isn't really for me. I think I really would like to become a Seventh-day Adventist. That is going to rock their world. They might not ever even talk to you ever again. They might kick you out of the house before you're even 18 years old. You don't know the ramifications for just saying, I don't want to be part of this religion. And yet, when they look at it, someone else doing that, they're like, oh man, that's terrible. And yet when they do it, it's like, well, obviously that's the right thing to do. Real narcissist behavior. When Anna was 12 years old, she asked her father for approval to get baptized. He wanted to know if it was her personal decision or if she was being pressured by someone. She responded, I love Jehovah. Her father agreed to her baptism. Hey, if you're facing some hostility from your family members, just tell them, you know what? I actually love Jehovah. And bada bing, bada boom, they'll just agree with you. Huh? Well, hey, I'm convinced. Were you brainwashed? What can you tell me? Are you being brainwashed? Is someone pressuring you? No, I love Jehovah. I'm convinced. Okay, well, hey, let's find a pool, get you baptized as soon as possible. Clearly, you know exactly what you're talking about. And at this time, she is 12 years old. Now, the next article is talking about how we can imitate Jehovah and Jesus's way of thinking, which again is just a euphemism for can you toe the party line that the governing body gives you. But there was an interesting paragraph in here because I thought it really indicated a potential cultural shift within the organization. So let's read it and let me explain. So here in paragraph 8, it says, as Jehovah's people, we can think in agreement by reflecting Jehovah's thinking as it is expressed in his word. For example, Jesus urged his followers to put the kingdom first in their life. With that in mind, a publisher in your congregation might decide to undertake some form of full-time service. Rather than suggest that he be kind to himself, we should speak positively about that worthy endeavor and offer our support. Now, this is a little bit curious. There's some loaded language here. Full-time service, that's what's known as spending 70 hours per month knocking on people's doors, or you can even do stuff like help build kingdom halls. And as long as you meet an hourly requirement, you are considered a full-time service. And they give you a little title like pioneer or something like that. So this is just doing free work for Watchtower, whether that is on the administrative side, whether that's on a construction level, or whether that's standing next to a cart and not talking to anyone. A little bit on that more later. But anyway, From my experience, from being a Jehovah's Witness, this never happened where someone would discourage you from doing free work for Watchtower. If you wanted to say, yeah, my life is not my own, I give it to you, Stephen Lett, everyone would pat you on the butt and say, good job there, bucko, you're a swell dude. You just carry right on there, buster. And no one was ever very negative about it. No one would sit back, do you really want to spend the best years of your life doing free work for Watchtower? Don't you think you might want to really think this over, maybe set yourself up for success, and then after you've done that, try and work in your free work for Watchtower? No one ever did that. Now, the reason I think that they're writing this is that there has been a cultural shift, and it's something I've talked about extensively as of late, with Jehovah's Witnesses essentially being in a generation where they have seen someone go from their cradle to their grave, fully believing and waiting for the end of this system of things, because that's what the Jehovah's Witness organization has been telling them for years and years and years, decades, their entire life. So someone like my grandparents, they grow up in it, wait their entire life, and die waiting. Now, because someone my age would have seen this entire process, they could think to themselves, hold on a second, would I want my kids repeating that exact same mistake? Maybe we need to be a little bit more cautious when telling people you don't need to get an education, you don't need to worry about saving for retirement, your real retirement is in the paradise. Maybe we should take a step back on just telling people, hey, as soon as you graduate high school, boom, full-time service. I can fully imagine there being a cultural shift within the organization because of parents having seen their grandparents live an entire life cycle waiting for the end and nothing happening, or their parents waiting an entire life cycle and not seeing anything happen, and now trying to help their kids not be so turbo witness anymore. You can be a Jehovah's Witness, that's fine, we'll do all the things, but maybe we're not going to just go crazy and throw the best years of our life away while slaving away, doing free work for Watchtower. I think that cultural shift is starting to happen, and that is why that they're trying to address this. Again, more evidence of that is in the annual meeting. They did mention that they're lowering the required age for people to be shipped off by their parents to their world headquarters or to their international construction projects. Because before it was, you graduate high school, you're 18 years old, take a year to pioneer, really come into your own, grow spiritually, and then we'll accept you. None of that growing spiritually. We just need some bodies. We just need some free labor. So come on down to Old Bethel, and I can't say Uncle Tony, he's not there anymore. But Cage Flegel will tell you what to do. I don't know. That was a terrible take. Whatever. Let's move on. Now, the next article talks about imitating Jesus' zeal for the ministry, or for preaching. This is a tough sell nowadays, because even Watchtower has made a fatal flaw in saying that the preaching work is essentially it's not important anymore, because it was the case where this thing that was before Armageddon, known as the Great Tribulation, when that Great Tribulation started, this precursor to Armageddon when everything just goes tits up, once that began, you no longer had an opportunity to become a Jehovah's Witness or turn to Jehovah or make peace with God in order to gain salvation. But now they changed that doctrine and said, hey, when this Great Tribulation starts and there is visible evidence here on planet Earth, and here's what it will look like. The Great Tribulation is going to be when all the governments in the entire world turn against every single religion and say, hey, religion is canceled. We don't want religion anymore. It's out. It's now illegal to have any religious affiliation of any kind. It is a one world government and no more religion. That's what we've decreed. So you can live your life normally. And if you see that happen, that evidence, like, whoa, man, maybe the Jehovah's Witnesses are right. You can now make a last second conversion to becoming a Jehovah's Witness and save your butt. That is a teaching from Watchtower. You can wait for evidence until Even if you are a Jehovah's Witness and you leave, even if you're disfellowshipped, you have an opportunity to wait for evidence and come back at the last second. They literally said this. So then the question is, what's the point of the preaching work? Why should someone become a Jehovah's Witness now if they can wait for this evidence and say, oh, wait, the Jehovah's Witnesses, they were right all along. I better join up now. There really isn't a point to it. And not only that, but people can use their own experience and deduce that there's no point to the preaching work because it is demonstrably a diminishing return at this point. You are continuing to invest in this thing and it's giving you less and less return. Just think about it from a pure numbers perspective. Back in, oh boy, I'm going to no doubt mess this up, but we're just going to do the best we can. Back in 1980, they had just a tick over 2 million Jehovah's Witnesses on planet Earth, like 2,200,000, something like that. And in order to double that number and be over 4 million, it took 12 years, 1992. I want to say it could be 91, could be 93, somewhere in there. But it took about 12 years to double that number. So in order to do that, you have to have a 7.2% increase per annum. And actually, well, if it was 12 years, it would be 6.4 and a bit percentage increase in order to double your number. Okay, so from 1992, when did they double that number again? Because if the standard is, okay, about every 12 years we double in size, okay, cool. Well, took like 30 years. So you essentially cut in half the efficacy of the preaching work. Instead of getting that 6.4 something return on your investment of preaching, now you're getting returns of 1.3%. It is insane. Well, not 1.3, but as you go farther and farther down the timeline, in their modern times, I think their actual increase year over year for the last like 10 years has been like 1 point something percent. It's going to take another 50 years, assuming that not that many people are dropping off, but they're probably dropping off at something like 0.8% as well. So it's going to take another 75 years before Jehovah's Witnesses double their number again. And that is not going to happen. So someone, if you are, witnessing this take place, and say you're a teenager or something in 1980, and you're saying, oh man, wow. So in 10 years, now I'm an adult and boom, we doubled in size. Now you're entering retirement before they're doubling in size again. Do you think that someone is not going to be paying attention and realize that this is demonstrably and absolutely a diminishing return? Again, why are they trying to drum up excitement for a preaching work that is dead? It doesn't do anything. It doesn't accomplish anything. No one has fun doing it. They don't have to record their time. The whole point behind it is gone. What the heck? Why? Why are we doing this nonsense anymore? It literally makes no logical sense. And it makes no logical sense because of the numbers and of Watchtower's own shifting doctrine. So because of this logical problem, I think Watchtower, as I've been saying for a while, is shifting towards, hey, we really just need to support the preaching work, even though this preaching work doesn't really do anything and no one really wants to do it anymore. But we need help with our construction projects and administrative things. So that is kind of preaching as well. And you can see from this picture, you got the guy doing the construction work, you got the guy doing the administrative stuff, and hey, maybe go and hand out some cards while you're on a walk. But the little caption there says, today preaching the good news is the primary work that Jehovah and Jesus want us to do. And in the paragraph that they cite here, it says, there is a direct connection between the preaching work and other theocratic assignments. For example, we build theocratic facilities or serve at Bethel to support the needs in the field. We provide disaster relief not only to render aid to our brothers and sisters, but also to help them resume their spiritual routine, which includes preaching. So there's a connection between working at Bethel or providing disaster relief because it helps other people go and preach. So it's kind of like ancillary preaching. I guess it's like an overlapping preaching sort of situation. We already got the overlapping generations. This is just overlapping preaching, essentially. If you build a kingdom hall, you're essentially preaching because someone can use that kingdom hall to meet. Well, wait, why do we have to meet in a kingdom hall? Why can't we just call each other, text each other, and show up somewhere? Oh, I suppose you don't need that kingdom hall at all, do you? No, but, helps your real estate portfolio. Anyway, what they try and do is the classic Watchtower thing, because they can't give up. They're trying to doomsday and guilt people with their goofy prophecies. So in this whole paradigm of having zeal for the preaching work, we have this. Even if people do not respond now, they may have an opportunity to do so before the end of the Great Tribulation. Notice it's the end, not the beginning of the Great Tribulation. What we say to them now may well help, or may well be what moves them to respond in the future. But that can only happen if we keep on preaching. And then a little bit later they say, we perceive how the rivalry between the Anglo-American world power and Russia and its allies fulfills the Bible prophecy about the King of the North and the King of the South in the time of the end. We also understand the Anglo-American world power is represented by the feet of the image described at Daniel 2. All these prophecies reveal where we are in the stream of time and spur us on to preach with a sense of urgency. Because some guy several thousand years ago had a dream about a statue that a rock exploded, that somehow that means America and Britain versus Russia, and therefore preach as a Jehovah's Witness. I wish I was joking or saying that sarcastically, but that's quite literally what they're telling their people, is that because some dude with a beard had a dream, all of this. Your guess is as good as mine. Now, if we want to see the real representation of modern Jehovah's Witness preaching, they've actually done it for us here, because they have a picture that shows exactly what it looks like to be a preacher of Jehovah's Witnesses nowadays. Now, you'll notice here in this picture in the bottom right corner, you'll have this little sign where it's trying to draw people in to come get a coffee for €2.50. Well, it looks like, is that two? Oh, maybe it's cents, because that's in English. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Maybe it's pounds. Who really knows? Doesn't matter. Anyway, there's no person standing next to that sign because it's not necessary. That sign is doing all of the work for you. They're going to look at that sign. They're either going to come in and buy a cup of coffee or they're not. So when Jehovah's Witnesses set up their little carts here, there's no point in them standing and being there. And if you go out there in the real world, you'll actually find that is the new meta for cart witnessing. The majority of the time when I see Jehovah's Witnesses out there in the wild, I can't find them. The carts are just kind of sitting there, and they're nowhere to be found. They're off sitting around a corner, just joking, watching episodes of the Great British Baking Show on their phones. They ain't standing next to the carts. Anyway, but you'll notice this is an accurate representation because no one is talking to them. And I've probably told this story before, but I used to participate in this non-activity. And for a full calendar year, I went to downtown Seattle every Wednesday. And I honestly don't know if I missed maybe a couple weeks, maybe, but I think I made up for it. Anyway, and I worked an 8-hour shift, stood next to a cart for 8 hours every single week, sometimes multiple times a week, for an entire calendar year. And you know what my result was? Absolutely nothing. No one, and I literally mean no one, was interested in talking to us standing at those carts. I believe we as a group, as a collective, placed 4 magazines and 1 book, and most of that was from people just trying to steal the carts or use it as something to burn for fire. That's it, man. I'm telling you, this does absolutely nothing. You may as well just put the sign out there like they do for coffee and say, hey, if people want to come in, that's what it is. But they insist on having this full group of people that come in and rotate, and you have to have a dude there to watch over the women that are standing next to the cart, because women aren't smart enough to stand next to a cart by themselves, according to Jehovah's Witnesses. It is worthless. It is a massive waste of time. And most people's experience with doing this cart witnessing is going to be exactly that. And so this picture, hey, you know what? Like Jesus, we remain positive that some will respond to the preaching work, even though no one is responding. So go and stand there and smile, even if no one's talking to you, and just be positive about it. Now, the last article we're going to talk about here is Keep Walking by Faith, and it has one of the classic, almost redundant Jehovah's Witness tropes these days when receiving theocratic direction. We often receive theocratic direction from our local elders, the circuit overseer, the branch office, or the governing body. That guides us in our worship. But what if, on occasion, we cannot understand the reason for the direction we receive? We may see only the negative effects that the direction could have on us. We may even begin to focus on the imperfections of the brothers who gave the direction. When we walk by faith, we trust that Jehovah is in control and that he knows our circumstances. As a result, we are quick to obey, and we do so with a positive attitude. We recognize that our obedience contributes to the unity of our congregation. We trust that even though the brothers taking the lead are imperfect, Jehovah will bless our obedience. In due time, he will correct anything that truly needs to be corrected. Even if you don't understand the reason, even if it makes you angry or upset or confused, don't just follow it, but be positive about it. That's wild. Hey, shout outs to Watchtower for just laying it out there on the table, not pulling any punches. They ain't holding back. Shut up, listen, and be happy about it. Because it came from the governing body, it came from the elders, and hey, if we make mistakes, it doesn't really matter. Jehovah will fix it anyway. The only thing that really needs to be fixed, though, is your attitude, okay? Anyway, that's about all I got for you guys today, so bada bing, bada boom, another Watchtower done. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like on it. Very much appreciated. It helps it get out to more people on YouTube. With all of that being said, stay safe, be kind, and just remember to, love the things you love more than you hate the things you hate. And have a good ass day.